My name is Alyssa Sweat, and I am part of the Writing and Communications degree. This is my senior year. And today I'm going to analyze the modes of cognition in Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. And I'm going to use the novel to determine if the modern adaptation Bridgerton is accurate in its portrayal of the Regency era. So I wanted to start with a sort of introduction to Sense and Sensibility for anybody that may not have read it before. So this follows the Dashwood family, and as the novel starts, the Dashwood patriarchs have passed away, leaving the estate Norland Park to John Dashwood, who is the son left. But his wife convinces him to leave his stepmother and his half-sisters Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret with only a small amount of the inheritance that was meant for them. So this leaves the Dashwood women decide to leave Norland Park, as it's technically no longer their estate because, of course, during the Regency era, the money and estate went to the male heir. And so they decide to live in a smaller cottage owned by a distant family. And so Eleanor, over this time period, she takes interest in Edward Ferrars, who is also Fanny's brother. But over time, we also learn that he has a secret engagement with another woman as well. At the same time, her younger sister Marianne falls for Mr. John Willoughby, and she ignores the interest of the more honorable Colonel Brandon. So as you can see from this introduction that Jane Austen has created, there's a lot of decision-making that these girls have to do as far as romance, but not only romance. Marriage is a big part of a woman's future during the time period, as they weren't able to go out and make their own money. So making these decisions played a big part in their future. So looking at rationalism and sentimentalism during the time period. So rationalism, seeing emotions and senses as obstacles to knowledge. So to use any emotion to get towards an answer towards knowledge was an obstacle. So this came from Aristotle's ideals of observation and empiricism, as he also wrote in Posterior Analytics. He credits ignorance to the lack of observation. And then René Descartes was a philosopher during that time period who expressed a distrust in sensory experiences. So he did not trust any knowledge that he came to from sight, sound, anything like that as well. Sentimentalism was in response to rationalist ideals, and sentimentalists use emotions as a guide to knowledge, so quite opposite from the sentimentalist ideals. This countered the cold nature of rationalists that sentimentalists believed. And it was also marked by an admiration of nature as well. So to look at Eleanor's character and how she uses a rational cognition, she observes her love interest character over time. So rather than falling in love with someone that she just met, she analyzes his character. And that's why I included a quote over there that shows how she uses observation in her cognitive process. She states, "I have seen a great deal of him, have studied his sentiments, ventured to pronounce that his mind is well informed, his enjoyment of books is exceedingly great, his imagination is lively, his observation is just and correct." So you can see from that description that whenever she looks at who might be potentially her partner for life, she wants to analyze those characteristics about him rather than any superficial ideas. She shows skepticism of Edward's intentions. So, like I said, she doesn't fall for a man that she just met. She expresses skepticism whenever she doesn't right away say that she's in love with him. She wants to get to know his intentions towards her better as well. But in the end, she only reaches a happy ending through marriage by adopting the sensible cognition. So while her character over time only uses very logical reasoning, in the end, it's only whenever she allows herself to show some emotion that she's able to be married to her true love. So then to look at her sister Marion, who is typically marked by a sensible cognition, as she approaches romance, she is swayed by grand gestures and appearances. So like I mentioned, her love interest is the Colonel Brandon. She first falls in love with him whenever she has this, she twists her ankle and falls into his arms, so she is swayed by this grand gesture, and he's described as handsome. Her description of him over there is that she was attracted to him because he fancied the heroes that she's read from her favorite stories. So she was more drawn to, like I said, grand gestures and appearances. But it is through this power that she gives to her emotions that she has her near-death experience and experiences selfishness, because whenever Mr. John Willoughby leaves her for a richer woman, unfortunately, she goes into a depression where she decides not to eat or take care of herself. And later on, whenever she looks back, she realizes that she let her emotions take control, and that she didn't consider how that would have affected her family, her mother and her sisters as well. And similar to how her sister had to adopt the opposite cognition, Marion does as well. So by the ending, she has to adopt more of a rational cognition along with her emotional cognition. It's only when she begins to consider the more virtuous Colonel Brandon that she begins to fall in love with the virtues of a better man for her, and she's able to reach a happy marriage by the end of the story. So I wanted to look at Bridgerton in comparison to Sense and Sensibility, because it is a modern take on the Regency era, but it's a popular televised version at that. And so because it's a relatively new show, starting airing in 2020, there's not a lot of academic research relating Jane Austen or the accuracy of the show. But I did find a source with Luke Dietrich, where he finds, through analysis of the Regency era and director Shonda Rhimes' artistic abilities, he finds that there is accurate representation of the Regency era, but also allows for creative freedom. While he analyzed music, fashion, race, and gender in the show, I wanted to add to the conversation, of course, by looking at sentimentalism, rationalism, and how that's portrayed in both. And then I did find a comparison from Saganya, who compared Sense and Sensibility with Julia Quinn's The Viscount Who Loved Me. So Julia Quinn's books are the ones that inspired Bridgerton, and The Viscount Who Loved Me is the inspiration for season 2 of Bridgerton. So looking at the characters from season 2 there, we have the two Sharma sisters who show up in the scene for the Regency era. The youngest, it's another duo of oldest sister, youngest sister. Miss Edwina Sharma is dubbed the diamond of the season, so she is the top woman of the marriage market, the one that any of the men would want to have. And she is pursued by Anthony Bridgerton, but he pursues her because of her status and not out of love. Her oldest sister, Kate, is more protective of her love and wanting someone for her that will love her instead of wanting status. And then we have another trope of the family depending on wealth because of marriage. So I brought over 2 quotes from the season that stood out to me as relating to the sentimentalist, rationalist thought. Unfortunately, I couldn't have a clip of the show, but in a scene, the oldest sister asks Edwina what she is to look for in a man. Edwina responds, "Someone charming and handsome, of course, a prince or a duke, perhaps." To which her older sister responds, "It is not a man's appearance or title that will woo you. It is his mind and spirit that will court yours." So similar, actually I will go to my next slide. So comparing these characters, Edwina shows strong comparisons to Marianne, the younger sister of Sense and Sensibility. Of course, they're both younger. It seems because of this that they show a little more naivety. They show more sensibility. But at the same time, they grow wiser over time as they gain more experiences. And then at the same time, there's an older sister, Kate, that relates to Eleanor. She has more of a rational plan going into the marriage market in life. But over time, she gives in to her emotions, which allows her to be married to her ultimate love interest as well. So like I said before, there hasn't been a lot of academic research comparison between like Jane Austen and Regency era being accurately portrayed. I wish I would have been able to find videos, interviews with the actual director being able to talk about the show and her artistic abilities, but I did find a clip that I would like to play of the actresses themselves talking about their role. So the first character talking, she plays Edwina, and then we'll hear from the girl that plays the older sister, Kate, as well.
Incredibly naive at the beginning young woman, and she's grown up reading fairy tales and being told about the power of love and seeing her parents be deeply in love. So she comes into it with just the purest intentions, and I think slowly throughout the season you see her kind of wise up a bit and realize actually there's more to love and marriage, and sometimes it's not as romantic and like a fairy tale as you expect, and you can either decide to play ball and accept that, or you can decide to stick to your guns.
She's already had her heart broken by losing her dad, and so I think the thought of falling in love with another man and letting someone in that way is really scary. You know, she comes to London with a plan, with a solid plan. Not going to get married, not meeting anyone, not interested. And then, yeah, what's his face gets in the way and then changes everything.
So like I explained, the way that they explain their characters, the way that the characters are portrayed in the show, they do seem to closely mimic that of the sensible and rational cognition that is portrayed in Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. But what I found interesting was that although they were making such close connections to that, it didn't seem that they were purposefully representing those philosophies and movements through the show as well. So to conclude, I wanted to compare Sense and Sensibility to Bridgerton because screen adaptations are increasing in popularity for time. arguably more than reading. So because of that, viewers rely on such adaptations for knowledge and perspective of Regency era or history. And because of that, accuracy is as important as engagement. So when portraying those eras, it's important to accurately visualize those. So writers such as Jane Austen provide firsthand accounts of the era through her fiction. Bridgerton showed some similarities, but no purposeful connections to the rational or sensible cognition when comparing these two sets of characters. So through this, I hope to see that Jane Austen or writers from that time period can serve as a framework for modern adaptations so that we can still use creative abilities but be able to portray those eras in an accurate way. Thank you. I really didn't think about that connection even with, I know you bring up Frozen, but it's a good point that it's prominent in really most like romance kind of tropes. I don't know if I have a definite answer right now. That would definitely be something that I would like to look into more as I continue this project as well. So I'll definitely keep that topic in mind as well. I know that there are other similar shows and even movies that have adapted, or shows that have adapted like Sense and Sensibility itself. So I think that might also be something interesting as well to look at and see like how accurately they portray the book as something that says that they're portraying that. I'll say, and I'll definitely look up some more shows that claim to represent the Regency era as well. Like I said, I have some in my head, but the names kind of slipped my mind right now, so I'll make note of those. Yeah, I could see it having lasting effect. I feel like it did make a pretty prominent effect even as like it was first aired, and that's why I chose that as my comparison because it was so popular. And I think there is something to be said about how Shonda Rhimes, the director, does use those creative abilities to be able to represent the era, but also like bring in that contemporary aspect. So I think maybe that would be something that gives it that lasting effect. Yeah, it'd definitely be interesting to see how it lasts in the future, but does that answer your question? Something that makes Austen stand out with this story is that, like, on the surface level, it seems like it would be just like a romance novel, but just maybe the fact that there is such an underlying, like, argument that she was trying to make during the time of there you don't have to choose between just rationalism or sentimentalism. There's argument that both is needed for one cognitive process. And then just the importance of the characters as women, like making their own decisions in the world. I imagine, of course, like that time period, like I mentioned, like they didn't have a lot of opportunity to make their own wealth, and now they were like left without wealth after their father passed away. So perhaps just the fact that it seems on the surface to be romance novel, but as you dig deeper, there's a broader like argument to the time period in for the women's power as well.